I think it's worth talking about the top 10 hurlers at this point, because the last time out,
big time,
we did go Tony Kelly number 1. We went Cian Lynch number 2, TJ Reid, Kyle Hayes, Sean Finn, Dahi Burke, Austin Gleeson, Joe Canning, Grode Hegarty, and Owen O'Donnell. So what way are we going to do that list here? Are we thinking Tony Kelly stays in at number 1, even though Limerick were the ones who went on and won the All-Ireland?
Well, Cian Lynch is now a 2-time hurler of the year, isn't he?
Cian Lynch is number 1 for me.
He's now a 2-time hurler of the year who delivered yet another outstanding display in a final. He's 6 points from playing the final, was man of the match in the final. Tony didn't do anything to go down unless somebody did a lot to go up, and Cian Lynch did enough to go up, I would say.
So we're going to go. Look, I'm fully in agreement there. I think it was just a case of just running through it. So I think Cian Lynch number 1. Yeah, we're both happy with that. Are we happy with Tony Kelly number 2, or has anyone else done enough? By the way, I think Conor Whelan has to force his way in here somewhere, and because Joe Canning is no longer playing at inter-county level, I think he has to slip out of this list.
It's funny, like I don't disagree with you, but what's the basis for bringing him in?
Conor Whelan.
Yeah, but what's the basis for bringing him in now when we haven't seen Galway play since we last did the top 10?
Because it was probably an oversight all along that we didn't have him in there. He's been more effective for Galway the last couple of years than probably anybody, Canning included. So when has he played bad for Galway?
No, I don't disagree with you.
Does he lead the attack?
He always leads the attack, and this year he played well when everybody else was playing poorly.
Yeah, and you of all people who insisted that when we did the All-Stars of the year that, look, if we leave Tony Kelly out in the second last one, we can't have him in then, and then you eventually insisted on him coming back in even though he hadn't played again after the quarterfinals. So for me, Conor Whelan is going in here.
Things change, man.
You change, man. Okay, well, we'll come to him in a little while. Are you happy to keep Tony Kelly number 2?
Who has... TJ Reid was treated last time. He's definitely not done anything to work his way up the ladder. Have any of the other Limerick players or none of the Cork players have done anything to put themselves up any higher? Has anybody, like, from based on the final or probably the semi-final as well?
This is from earlier in the championship. Like we did this early in the championship, so a lot of the championship can be counted in here. That I'd say most lads have played a few games here, so it's not just since the final.
So who are we looking at? Like, who are we looking at for hurler of the year contenders this year? Probably looking at Cian Lynch, obviously, who's going to get it.
Yeah.
Probably Kyle Hayes, maybe.
He'll be in the conversation. Yeah. Will Seamus Flanagan be in the conversation? Like, he scored a point in the final, but before that, people were talking about him for it. I'm not saying he's in this list per se, but people were talking about Grode Hegarty scoring 2-2 in an All-Ireland. You know, people are going to be looking at that. Got a few scores.
Does Tom Morrissey need to come into the conversation as well?
He probably does. He scored 3. Did he score 3 points in the All-Ireland final?
Yeah, 5 in the semi-final, man of the match.
Scored something like 5 or 6 against Tipperary in the Munster final. Was brilliant in the All-Ireland last year. Was my hurler of the year last year.
And mine, yeah.
So, did you not go with Hegarty last year, no?
No, I was a big Tom Morrissey fan. Tom Morrissey lost himself the hurler of the year last year by being too generous.
yeah, needs to stop passing that ball. So, well, first of all, I think TJ Reid is probably going to slip a little bit down this list.
Yeah, I think so, to be honest with you. Definitely, like, you'd have to say that he's going to find it hard to reach the peaks that he reached over the last couple of years. And we talked about the age profile, so yeah,
nearly 34.
Like, find it hard to see him scaling those heights again. I'm just not sure body wise if you can do that, and he's an awful lot done in the last while with very little time off. So he probably drops down, but it's a matter of who comes up, you know. I'd say Tony Kelly's like, yeah, it's an interesting one, to be honest with you.
Get the comments in. Get the comments in.
How many Limerick lads are we going to be looking at in the top 10? Like, you're probably going to be looking at 4 or 5 realistically, are you?
It's going to be hard to avoid that, because the same with the All-Stars. Like, people were slating us before when we were saying, well, you can't have every Limerick guy in every position here, but then you're like punishing them and leaving them out just because just because the team is so good, you're just giving credit to certain lads and saying it's because of Cian Lynch or whatever, and then you're looking at how maybe Barry Nash played or how Burns played, and you're like, well, you have to recognise them too. It's a hard one to decide, but like, is Aaron Gillan has he moved up the pecking order here? He scored 1-3 from playing the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, he obviously got the goal against Waterford in the semi-final as well. Although he was quiet that day, and Conor Prunty probably got the better of him. Yeah, I'm kind of finding it hard to see where to start here, to be honest with you. We probably need to look at, like, there's a Cork player come into the equation.
Well, I don't like Patrick Horgan is the same thing again. He's 33, so if you're looking at Reid and did he take over that All-Ireland final? He did score 2 points from play in the first half, and the ball going into him was fairly cat. So you can't really blame him for that. But it's not. He certainly didn't take over the game in any way, shape, or form. And would other lads have come out centre forward and found another way to get themselves into the game? So I'm talking about versatility there, because you probably wouldn't necessarily look to put him out there. So I'm not necessarily criticising him for it, because some lads, they're suited to that. Other lads play inside, and that's going to be the way no matter what. So other than that, with Cork, and I go through the team here, like, you're not going to go with the goalkeepers, not any of the full back line. I don't think Mark Coleman had big enough final for us to be talking about him. Tim O'Mahony, great potential. Dara Fitzgibbon, no, I don't think so at the moment. Luke Meade, no. Conor Cahalane, like Seamus Harnedy, I know we put him in our All-Star team under duress as far as you're concerned for this year. But again, 4 points in an All-Ireland final, very good against Limerick the first day out until he went off injured. His age profile, I think he's 31 now. So of the forwards, which also includes Conor Cahalane, a de facto midfielder, Robbie O'Flynn, Jack O'Connor, Shane Kingston. On potential, Jack O'Connor is probably the most likely there.
Yeah, I don't see him making the top 10 though, particularly after the All-Ireland final. He should get an All-Star this year. Well, I think he will, even though we left him out. But I don't know if there's a Cork man in this top 10 realistically. And I'm just trying to cut it down. Like Clare, outside of Tony Kelly, who else do we think we're looking at? Anyone else in the top 10 from Clare?
I see Cathal Malone mentioned there, but he had a really good season, but I don't see him as one of the top 10 hurlers in this list.
We rate him unbelievably highly.
Yeah,
I don't see him in the top 10, being honest now.
Yeah.
So like that means we're looking at one player from Clare, Kelly.
Yeah, and we have him in at number 2 at the moment.
Yeah. Just say Waterford. Who are we looking at from Waterford? We had Gleeson in at 7 the last time.
And are you going to move Stephen Bennett in here? Caleb Lyons?
Don't think he did enough. I don't think either did enough to warrant being parachuted in, did they?
Yeah.
Was Jamie Byrne harshly left out?
I think so. Like, I rate him so highly, and I know that he didn't have a massive game against Limerick until he went in full forward. But is that because Waterford were getting overrun everywhere, and their own ability to pass the ball to each other, sometimes simple hand passes, broke down in that game? They were kind of their own worst enemy to some degree in that game. I think he's in this conversation. The way he came back against Galway, like his first game in months, and he came in and took over the game and scored 4 points from play. Not too many lads are going to do that.
If we're picking a midfield partnership for the best team in the country right now, would he be in it?
If we were picking a team for the best players, not the best season, I'd say so.
The best team in the country. If you could pick the best 15 in the country that you were going to war with in the morning, Barron would be midfield, wouldn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think then we'll have him in the conversation in a minute. So tip players. Flash had no tip players, he said.
Yeah,
make a compelling argument to the contrary.
Well, first off, guys, your criteria for searching top 10 appears to be based on scoring forwards. Have we no defenders in contention? That's Joe Butler. I think we do, because in the previous one we had Kyle Hayes, Sean Finn, Dahi Burke, and Owen O'Donnell. So 4 out of the 6, I think that's a decent representation. Tipperary, God almighty, this is tough. I'm going to want you wouldn't hear of Seamus Callanan in the last one, and because of the injury profile, and you can see he wasn't right, I don't think we can have him in at the moment. If he got 100% right next year, then maybe so. But at the moment, I tend to agree with you on that one. What about Jason Ford? He scored 3 from play. 3 from play against Waterford in the quarterfinal where Tipperary got knocked out. 6 or 7 from play against Limerick the first day out. Who else has done that against Limerick, by the way?
Tony Kelly.
Yeah, fair enough. He did that.
That's about it. That's about it, though.
That's about it. Otherwise, I look through the Tipperary team, and I'll just go with the one that started against Waterford. Hogan in goal, Barrett, Paddy Maher, Heffernan, Cadell, Brendan Maher, who's retired, Ronan Maher, Alan Flynn, Dan McCormack, Breen Ford, Noel McGrath, Callan, John O'Dwyer, Jake Morris. It's going to be tough to make an argument at the moment for anybody. I think Barrett is still operating at a high level. Heffernan can get up there, but like he was taken off that day against Waterford, so it's hard to make that case. Ronan Maher not too far off it. Yeah, unfortunately, I think the only one that I could really push for at the moment is Jason Ford. And within games, sometimes he takes over, and then the second half against Limerick wasn't really seen. So just at the moment, I think it's going to be hard to get a tip name in there.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you, to be honest with you. There's a lot of lads operating.
Would you give Ford? Would you give Ford any hop here?
I give him a bit of hop, but it's probably, as you say, it's the consistency actually within games. He can take over a game for a spell, but probably doesn't dominate games overall. Like he took over the game in the first half against Limerick, and listen, it wasn't just him. There was a lot of guys in trouble in the second half. But I probably see him just outside that top 10 there at the moment. Like I'm just trying to cut down this as much as possible before we get to Limerick. Like that's 4 Munster counties we've looked at there. If we look at Kilkenny outside of TJ Reid, are we looking at anyone else in this top 10?
Probably only Pádraig Walsh. And I don't know if we're necessarily, it wasn't exactly a standout season. Like he's always good, but I don't think it's a season where you're saying he's not going to be in the All-Star picture, I would imagine.
No, I don't think so. Owen Murphy would be the other one I'd mention, but I don't know if a goalkeeper is going to make it into the top 10. Are we happy enough just to talk about TJ Reid and Kilkenny? That's all.
Unless people come in with a suggestion with somebody else, and obviously you have to back it up too.
Yeah, for the top 10, I can't see it. Who did we give any Kilkenny player All-Stars this year? Just Owen Murphy. So he would be the only one then that could come into the equation, and that All-Star was it's 50-50 nearly with him and Nicky Quaid at the moment.
Well, does Nicky Quaid come into the conversation here?
He might have to. He might have to. There might be a lot. Like the thing about Limerick is, I think we're going to end up with a lot of Limerick players in this, and I don't have an issue with that. I normally would, and we might see it as overreaction, but they've lost. They've lost an All-Ireland semi-final in the last 4 years, really. The only really meaningful game that they've lost. They've won 3 All-Irelands. They have been the dominant force. They've won, 16 points in this year's All-Ireland final, 11 last year. They are totally dominating. So maybe we weren't giving them their due, particularly when we did the first top 10. I think we were an awful lot fairer in the second top 10. And I think we could be swimming in green by the end of this top 10.
Yeah. Is Caleb Lyons in this conversation?
I don't think so, Shane. He was in the conversation, all right, but he hasn't done enough to come into the top 10, I don't think. Not in my view anyway. On potential. He's load of potential and could get into it in time, but not at the moment. If we just start, I'll just skip back to Limerick. Skip back, yeah. So, just get back to Limerick for a second. I just want to talk with the pecking order here. We go down through their team quickly. Does Nicky Quaid have to be on the short list?
Nicky Quaid? Is that what you said? I think so. I think he's probably not far off it. Yeah, he has to be. He's just so influential and such a key part of what they're doing. Because other teams, you're thinking, geez, if only they could sort out their puck out plan. I mean, whether it's down to him, Kinnerk, or a few other people in between, they have that sorted, and he's a brilliant part of it.
Yeah, okay. We're both. Sean and Finn hasn't done anything to. He might fall down or go up, but he's definitely going to be in the top 10. Yeah. With due respect, I don't think Dan Morrissey is going to be in the top 10, albeit he's a brilliant fullback. Barry Nash is as flew-in cornerback. He's been brilliant, but I don't think he's going to come into the top 10. Dermot Burns, I don't think will come into the top 10, will he?
No, but he's excellent. But yeah, I don't think quite in this one.
I'd probably say the same about Declan Hannon as well. As good of a quarterback as he is, I don't think he's going to come into it. So, is that fair to say? I think Kyle Hayes Kyle Hayes and Sean Finn will be the two defenders that will come into the reckoning. I'd have Will O'Donoghue in the conversation, funnily enough, and I probably didn't go hard enough for him at an earlier stage. But the longer, as years go by, to me, the more important he gets to Limerick. He's just, to me, he makes them tick. I have to say, he just makes them tick. He's almost like a modern day version of Michael Fennelly, maybe without getting forward as much for those big kind of scores, maybe that Fennelly would have got, maybe the couple of goals that he got. But I'd probably be pushing to have him in the conversation here. He should be, to me, he's going to be an all-star this year. Should have been an all-star last year. And I think he's definitely one player I think that they couldn't do without.
Yeah, John O'Sullivan says from Limerick, Finn Hayes, Lynch, Hegarty, Tom Morrissey, and probably Gillan. Are you having Gillan?
Probably not. Probably not.
Do you think if Patrick Horgan, James Callan, and TJ Reid, name one or two other forwards, were getting the same level of ball, that they would do more or less with it than he does?
They do as much, I think.
Yeah?
I think they do as much. He gets great ball in fairness. He gets lovely ball in. Like, if you're playing the Limerick full forward line, it's an absolute dream. It is an absolute dream. Your
biggest worry would be too much ball coming in.
It's like what we said earlier. Just hit to the other corner for 5 minutes. Give me a chance.
Would Conor Whelan do more with that ball? I think so.
Oh.
And like I'm still saying, Gillan is class, but I just feel like it would be goal city if Conor Whelan was in there.
I'm going to put it this way, Shane. We had Dahi Burke in there the last day, and I think he's fallen down the pecking order a good bit.
I think Whelan should always have been in our list. I think that was an oversight on my behalf. By the way, Conor Heaney says, what ball does Gillan waste? And it's a good question. I mean, he does sometimes not score goal chances. I think he's 6 championship goals, maybe 7 championship goals ever. But he is a really, really good player.
I have no problem. Conor Whelan does need to come into the conversation. We're flying through. We have a fair short list now. Just on the dubs, you and me both think Donald Burke is very, very good talent.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in the top 10 in the country, though.
No. But very, very good.
And if we're being on, like, with the way Owen O'Donnell's season worked out, I don't think he can be in the top 10 either.
Well, because of injury, I suppose. That ruined his year. But, like, is that a bit unfair then? I mean, that's outside his control. And when we did see him on the field, he was excellent. Jeez, he had a great performance against Galway.
I know what you're saying, but that was a borderline call, and that was based after the Galway game, after they knocked Galway out of Leinster Championship, and he didn't play another minute of Championship thereafter. Yeah,
so a bit of recency bias is what you're saying.
Well, no, it's just that there's other guys have passed him out within that time, I would say.
Mark Corcoran says, no Gillan, same standard as Stephen Bennett. Jason Ford is better than both of those guys. If Ford was up front for Limerick, it would be goals. I actually think that's true. I think Ford would go to town if he got that amount of ball in space. When he's playing with Tipperary, the one time he got space against the top team was Limerick in the first half. Not many forwards would have scored as much as he did against Limerick.
Okay, yeah, fair. No, they wouldn't have had. They wouldn't have had. Talking about like risks and stuff earlier, there's not many players who would have been able to do what he did in that first half against Limerick. I think Aaron Gillan's a brilliant forward, but there's probably 5 other Limerick players I'd have ahead of him, if I'm honest.
Okay. So at the moment, we're Cian Lynch 1, Tony Kelly 2. Who are you thinking 3? I'd have Sean Finn ahead of probably any other Limerick player there.
Really?
Yeah. Well, who would you have ahead of him?
Kyle Hayes wouldn't be trotting too far behind him.
No, but I'd nearly have Tom Morrissey ahead of Kyle Hayes, and this isn't an insult to Hayes, but I just have Tom Morrissey because he always keeps the scoreboard ticking. His work rate's unbelievable. He's unselfish. I just think he's such a crucial part of it.
Let's do the pecking order of the Limerick players really quickly. So Cian Lynch is going to be at the top, okay?
Yeah.
Who I'm as a cornerback, I'm more than happy with Sean Finn to be second because he's going to be a four in a row All-Star at the end of this year. That's okay. You're Tom Morrissey, who is coming from out from the cold. Do you think he'd be the next best Limerick player?
Yeah, I think so. I think we don't always get it right. Maybe we have to hold our hands up and say we didn't have Tom Morrissey on the list, and by God we were wrong, but we're going to eat our humble pie.
We're after getting knocked out of championship. Lads, we got it wrong with the team selection.
You know yourself, sometimes
wrong,
the best performance you can ever give as a player is be injured and miss a match where the team loses.
That's the fact, yeah.
Yeah. And then,
you know, I'm a big fan of Tom Morrissey. Massive fan. Yeah. But the pecking order, I would still have probably Cian Lynch, Sean Finn, Tom Morrissey, Kyle Hayes.
And where does Hegarty fit in the list?
Probably next, and then Will O'Donoghue just after him.
My God. And I wonder, do Limerick people agree with that? Because and we're obviously putting Gillan behind all of them. Even though we don't really rate him, people end up thinking that we don't rate him, but we absolutely do rate him. So then, where does Conor Whelan fit in that pecking order? We got it so wrong with him. I think he's up there, probably in the top 5.
Relax now, Shane. Relax now.
Well,
he's a very good player, but like what is he? He's one All-Star throughout his Galway career, correct?
Let me just double check.
And
but you know yourself that those All-Star things aren't always right.
Yeah, no, I do know that, but there's no other year where he deserved an All-Star. I think you're after taking a big departure here now. I'd agree with you on a small bit. I'll agree with you on Conor Whelan. Flash, come on now. He should be in the top 15. Conor Whelan's a top class forward. I'd agree. He should be. I have no problem with the Galway place in the top 10 moving to Whelan from Canning, but he would be at the lower end of the 10 for me. Okay, right. Well, where's Jamie Barron falling in this? The lower end of the 10 also. Wow. So where's Nicky Quaid? It's not wow. It's just the amount of class that comes ahead of him. Nicky Quaid is a brilliant goalkeeper, but I still have him behind all the outfield players that we've mentioned there. Okay, all of them. And we're basically, where are Galway other than Conor Whelan here? Brian Concannon had a quiet season, can't justify having him in here. Cathal Mannion, I thought for most of the game against Waterford, he wasn't really seen, can't really have him in there. Is Dahi Burke dropping out of the top 10? Well, he's a very quiet year. His role is unknown at the moment. I don't know what he's going to do next year. I'm a big fan of his, but you kind of have to. I suppose you have to take what you're seeing at the moment. You're only as good as your last game to Verney. I do. I have no issue with saying that. Like probably 5 Limerick players minimum in this. John O'Sullivan says on ability, Whelan is better than every Limerick forward. I'd agree with that. On ability, yeah, but sure, like on ability, there's some amount of lads are better than other lads. But the Limerick lads, in fairness, you can say, yes, if he was in that Limerick team, but those lads are in that Limerick team and they're producing it every day. Whelan is in another team, a very talented team. He's not in like a lower tier team or anything like that, far from it. But he hasn't delivered. He's delivered flashes of brilliance. He was very good this year when a lot of other lads were poor. So to me, his stock does rise, and I think that's enough to have him in the top 10. Better than Cian Lynch, actually, says Flash. No, actually, sorry, I'll take that back. I put Cian Lynch number 1 on ability as well. The minute you said it, you had your head down laughing because you knew you were wrong. Well, look, I was wrong. Unlike yourself, I'd have the class to admit it. So, are we looking at any more Waterford lads? Stephen Bennett, Caleb Lyons, Tidy Burke's obviously been injured. He'd probably be in this conversation otherwise. Yeah, no, he would be in the conversation if he was fit, and hopefully will come into the conversation next year. But I think we can get properly stuck into it now. I have to say, I think we can get properly stuck into it. I'd still have Lynch at 1. I'd still have Tony Kelly at 2. Yeah, Sean Finn at 3. Sean Finn at 3. Okay. Is TJ Reid still in here? And if he is, he has to come down a small bit. He has to come down. Definitely has to come down a small bit. He definitely would have to, yeah. So Sean Finn was 3. That's the second Limerick player. Tom Morrissey was the was the third Limerick player in our sequence there.
Yeah, is he better than Conor Whelan?
Well, he's been more effective in recent years than Conor Whelan has.
Yeah, I do see a comment here from Conor Heaney. Did Whelan ever get 2-2 in an All-Ireland final?
No, he did not.
No.
I think Whelan was quiet in both All-Ireland finals he played, to be fair. Noel Connors
scored a goal that time, though.
At the very end, Shane. At the very end, having been kept very quiet that day.
Yeah. Is Owen Cody in there?
The top 10 hurlers in the country. Nah,
he's in on potential. He could go there. He could go there.
He could in time, yeah. He could in time,
yeah. Right. So we're saying Lynch, Kelly, Finn. Then are we putting Tom Morrissey next?
He's not far off, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and I don't see too many people getting their comments in telling us who should be higher up the list. Because I've already said with Tipperary, the way Tip played this year and even last year, you can't really justify anyone outside of Jason Ford, and I'm just not quite sure he gets into that list at the moment.
Look at how consistent Morrissey has been in recent years. He's been outrageous in the last couple of years. Could get nominated for Hurler of the Year again this year. Might just miss out. What was in the top 5 hurlers this year, and Morrissey was in. To me, he was the top hurler last year, or in the top 2. So I have no problem putting Tom Morrissey in 4.
Okay, Morrissey 4. Then after that, are we fitting in Jamie Byrne, Whelan, Nicky Quaid, TJ Reid?
Remember, like Austin Gleeson was at 7 the last time. So has anything changed your opinion of him?
Well, let's see. Against Tipperary, he did get his name on the score sheet, got a goal. Really good against Clare the first day out, when the team was absolutely terrible. Didn't he score 4 from wing back plus a free? So he was very good that day. He scored a bit against Tipperary as well. I'm trying to remember exactly what he scored. 1-3, I think, that day, including a couple of sidelines. How did he go against Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final, do you remember?
Quietish, put over a line ball. I think he might have still ended up with 4 points. 1 could have been a long-range free, a line ball, and 2 from play, if my memory serves me right, or thereabouts. But
they were beaten handily enough.
Yeah, now, to be fair, a lot of players have struggled against Limerick, and that's not to do even with lack of individual brilliance. It's just to do with you're coming up against a machine, and it's very hard for any one man to break down a machine.
Gleeson blows hot and cold too much, says SSRI.
I think he's been an awful lot hotter than colder in the last 2 years. He's been predominantly hot. Like
you said, 5 points against Limerick, a free, a sideline, and 3 from play. I think he's pretty high up this list, actually, considering what he's doing. Even the day against Laois, when he was thrown up full forward, and they didn't play all that well that day. I remember him catching a couple of great balls, and he got 1 or 2 nice scores. I think he has to be pretty high up this list.
He was 7 the last time. I'd be happy enough. I'd be happy enough for him to stay around 7.
Yeah. And so would you put Gerard Hegarty ahead of him and Kyle Hayes?
I'd probably have Hayes next. In the top 5 you could have 4 Limerick lads. Yeah.
And the way they're dominating, it's probably fair enough too, isn't it?
It's like if we'd done this in 2008, like you'd be looking at You'd be looking at Henry, JJ, Tommy, Owen Larkin. Like, is that the territory we're in? Like, I think it kind of is.
Yeah, it's probably not. So we're looking at Lynch, Kelly, Finn, Morrissey, Hayes, even Hegarty next, and then Austin Gleeson.
Hegarty, Austin Gleeson. Yeah, I'd be okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Seamus Flanagan been mentioned here by Jercanti.
A big fan of Seamus Flanagan. I do think there are better individual talents within that Limerick setup than him, but that's not having a go at him. It's just there's so many good players to pick from there.
So if Austin Gleeson is 7, I'd be looking at Conor Whelan for number 8.
You're looking at Conor Whelan, Jamie Byrne, Will O'Donoghue. Those sort of TJ Reid is still to come into the mix there as well.
And we're dropping Owen O'Donnell out of it because we haven't seen enough from him lately. Nicky Quaid been mentioned. Any case for Jason Ford on your behalf?
Not enough, to be honest with you. Not enough. Not enough. I need to see it throughout a whole season and not just sporadically.
Yeah, some people not happy with my mentions of Whelan, but I honestly think he's absolutely brilliant, and they should be trying to get every single ball to his hands. No way on Gleeson, lad says, well, Verney was right before to say that he had been consistent for about 18 months, but last day out he fell back into his old trick of being anonymous in the big game. 3 points from play when you're getting hammered by Limerick. I don't see that as anonymous. Lose to Clare, scored 4 points from play from wing back. I don't see that as anonymous. Moved up full forward, did well against Tipperary, full forward, scored 1-1 from play. I don't agree with that take.
He's very divisive, isn't he? He's very, like Psycho I mentioned about Aidan O'Shea earlier, he is very, very divisive. I have to say, and it's one of the viewers who said, like, if Jamie Barron is in, Will O'Donoghue has to be ahead of him.
Yeah, I know that's fair, just based on their matchups. But then are we saying, like, with Limerick being such a superior team overall across the field, does it kind of mean that he's going into a battle that he can't win every time?
Potentially, but I just haven't seen Will O'Donoghue. I can't remember him playing a bad game in recent years at all. Yeah. Where does TJ Reid fit into this? We have the top. Would I be right in saying we have the top 6, 7 filled?
If you're happy enough with Gleeson at 7, there we have, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. No, I'm happy with Gleeson at 7. Yeah, put Conor Whelan at 11. He can be like, the 19th hole.
I see Jack Nulty saying TJ over Whelan. How can you say that he's not as good, but still arguably important for Kilkenny? Whelan good, but hasn't dragged Kilkenny to Galway to the big wins when needed. So, and there's a bit of that talk going here. But like, even when we're talking top 10 hurlers, we're talking about what do we expect to even see from them next year. And I see Whelan's graph continuing to go that way, whereas any player in their mid-30s is going to find it harder to do that. Like, Whelan is still only 20. Ridiculously, he's only 24.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. But TJ's graph, when higher, has been phenomenally higher than Conor Whelan's.
Yeah, but we're talking about right now. What you did for me 2 years ago is no longer really. I mean, next year we know that Conor Whelan is going to be the focal point of that Galway attack. If they get the right man in charge, let's say they get Micheál Donoghue in charge, and they go well next year, Conor Whelan's going to be at the edge of the square. There might be decent ball going into him, and no defender is going to want to mark him. And he'll have, like, this will be the first time that every ball will be directed at him, because in the past it's all about getting the ball to Joe Canning. So I can see him going off next year if Galway play well.
You can see that, and you're basing that on the potential that you see. Whereas with TJ Reid, you've seen that for the guts of about 6 or 7 years now, albeit this year was a good bit quieter. I do think there's a balancing act there between what you think you're going to see and what you've already seen numerous times over the last couple of years. I'd have TJ in around 8, if I'm honest.
Yeah, Aaron says Gleeson is above all Limerick lads, bar Keane Lynch, in my opinion. Think about what he could do in the Limerick side. As a team, Limerick are brilliant, but most of Limerick players put most of the Limerick players in other teams. Verney just loves hammer and tip, lads. Mentions Tony Kelly is scoring a lot from play against Limerick. Yeah, and in the first round, maybe. In a final, no. Conor Heaney.
They didn't play them in a final, to be fair. They've only played them in the first round, so you can only score against them when he got the chance to score against them.
Horgan has to be in the top 10 for consistency alone and dependability for scores. Gleeson ahead of 14 Limerick players. Haha, stop drinking on a Monday. Lads, don't be like that to each other. And I don't think they'd be superstars. So, I would have Whelan ahead of Reid here, because I've really rated Whelan for years, and I can't believe we didn't talk about him earlier in the year.
You're a gas man. Galway played 2 games this year and were knocked out of the championship. Conor Whelan wasn't in the top 10 in either of our previous 2 attempts, and now you want to have him in ahead of have him in ahead of one of the greatest hurlers of all time
because of the trajectories.
Yeah, Shane, you're basing it far too much on potential. You could also say in the recent years that Conor Whelan is going to explode. He's going to explode. It hasn't really happened yet. We think it's going to happen, but it hasn't really happened yet.
Like, even when they were poor against Dublin, Whelan scored 1-1. Last year, terrorised Tipperary in the back door. Wasn't he very good in the All-Ireland semi-final last year when others were quiet against Limerick?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking there, when's he going to, kind of explode? And
explode was the word I used. Yeah, like TJ has exploded at different stages.
No, of course he has. But like, you're talking about, like, is this guy going to be taking over games next year? And I can see Whelan doing that. And I think his track record is that he generally plays really, really well and class in some games. And generally the main man is put on him, just like Reid. So at 24 years of age, to me, there's more in it.
Who's more important to their side?
Next year, as in going forward.
Well, for the 2022 championship, who's more important?
Whelan. Because I can see...
Do you really think so?
Next year, I think that Kilkenny will be more reliant on Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen. I'd have to say, I do think that. Like, he's still going to be there and going to take massive watching and that type of thing. And he's still absolutely class, hence why we're talking about him in the top 10. But I can see him being probably just that, those two lads, Mullen and Cody, being the guys. Whereas Whelan is going to be the absolute focal point of that attack for Galway.
Yeah, it's interesting. I still wouldn't have Whelan ahead. I can't. Just based on, like, we've seen flashes, and a lot of it has been in league games as well. To be honest with you, a lot of his best stuff has been done in league games where he's been terrorising defenders.
Hey, there's a question. S. Law, transfer market. Who would you pay more money for, Whelan or TJ?
Depends. If it was like a 2-year deal, TJ. If it was a long-term 5-year, 6-year deal, Whelan.
Right, so to play 70 minutes in every match next year when the round robin is back, and you're probably going to be playing 4 games in 5 or 6 weeks, who do you want?
I would say TJ is probably one of the most durable players in the game.
Yeah,
I'd take TJ. He has hardly missed a minute. I don't think he's missed a minute of championship. When was the last time he missed a minute of championship? I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Is Whelan the new Callanan for Stapo? The betrayal?
Yes, he is.
Relax, Shane. When did Whelan score 6 points from play against Limerick in a final? Lynch is lauded for 6 in the final, but Ford is not. Inconsistency. Yeah, I do. I feel I need a bit of support from the Tipperary public who are watching here. I'm not getting that support for Ford. It's very hard for me to push him when people aren't rolling in behind me. Shane is getting flustered over this Whelan stuff. Like him saying, there was an argument to not have Shefflin in the Limerick 2021 Kilkenny 2008 team, when of course I was pointing out statistics and facts. Liam Sheedy, after he finished up, said if there was a transfer market, Nicky Quaid would be his top transfer target. He's like a quarterback, he said.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't like to be one of the Tipperary goalkeepers.
Yeah?
It's an interesting comment. If you were one of the Tip goalkeepers, what would you be thinking?
Yeah, okay. Limerick players are a bit one-sided, though, according to Shane.
The 5 or 6 Limerick players that we're going to have in the top 10 are a bit one-sided. We need to nail this down here. I'm going with Reid at 8, Whelan at 9, and Will O'Donoghue at 10.
No, I think Conor Whelan's ahead of TJ Reid at this stage. Just, we're looking at one lad entering his peak and another guy who's going to be retired in the next year or so.
Yeah, we're also looking. Yeah, okay. But we're also looking at, like, one of the best players that's ever played, who has consistently done it. Fair enough, he didn't do it this year. Even if he's on the wane a small bit, if he gets back even the 2019 level of form, he will, and Conor Whelan stays with how he played, in the last couple of years. TJ Reid will have more of an impact in the championship next year than Conor Whelan will.
Reid was held scoreless from play in a number of games in 2019, and then last year and this year just gone was quieter. So to me, I don't buy that.
Just 1 second now.
Yeah, there's a lot of heat there.
The sun is shining in there.
Yeah, Bernie's there. He'll be back in a second now. Just a couple of comments here. Limerick, or Joe LK20, Limerick players are a bit oh, sorry, we had that already. Your Tipperary faithful haven't shown up in the comments like your beloved hurling team in the second half of the Munster final, says Flash. Owen O'Donnell gone, robbery. Well, we haven't finished up just yet. Did Verney invest in a vanity light? Very lit up face today. If you were young Tipperary, if you were young Tip goalkeeper, they all are, they'd be thinking, I'd need to get better. That's a fair comment too. And just see a couple of more comments in here before bringing back in Michael Verney. Just a reminder, we are brought to you by orgaretro.com. And if you want to get this Tyrone jersey or any of the other ones, go to orgaretro.com, use the promo code OurGame. Please do subscribe to the channel on all the platforms, especially on YouTube if you want to hit it, the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. And go to patreon.com/OurGame if you want the audio podcast. So look, I'm having Whelan ahead of TJ Reid here, and I'm not hearing any more about it.
Well, listen, I need to go and cook some dinner and I need to actually go and do a few bits and pieces. So we'll go Whelan 8, Reid at 9, and Will O'Donoghue at 10.
So you're leaving out Jamie Byrne?
Well, on the basis of what I said earlier, those two have matched up. And when they've matched up the 3 times they've met in recent years, O'Donoghue has had the strong hand all 3 times.
And what about Jason Ford and Nicky Quaid? They're out of the picture as well, are they?
I think they are. If Ford's able to do, half of what he did against Limerick on a more consistent basis, he'll work his way in a heartbeat. But it's just that consistency. And like that is a criticism that is thrown out by many tip faithful as well, is that you get the flashes, but that you don't get it often enough.
Okay, so we'll just bring it up one last time on screen here and read through it. And so there we go. Cian Lynch, number 1, Tony Kelly 2, Sean Finn, Tom Morrissey, Kyle Hayes, Grode Hegarty, Austin Gleeson, Conor Whelan, TJ Reid, and Will O'Donoghue. If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/OurGame.